We're here live with Andy Beal from Crowley Corporate Attorneys. With so many crowd sales already being done through the online exchanges, do you think the upcoming regulation will have much of an impact on consumer protection?
So I think you're referring to the regulation coming out of New York and the bit license program, and I think a lot of that is focused on consumer protection. I think a lot of it was motivated by some of the shortcomings of the early exchanges like Mt. Gox and what happened to them. So I think the general focus of financial regulation in general seems to be consumer protection, and it's written to address problems that exist in the market. It's a direct response, so it's totally reactionary to what happens. So yes, I think there are a lot of consumer protection. A lot of it's focused on transparency and making sure that business is properly capitalized, properly managed, and run, and compliant with federal and state laws. So
that makes sense. Do you don't think the large majority would just choose to go the non-regulated route?
Crowd sales are interesting because I think that's a sort of a niche segment within the Bitcoin space. I think you have, to the extent that a company is well capitalized and they can afford to do compliance, right, I think it's to their benefit to do it, right?
It is, for sure.
Because if you are following the law, you can be the most outspoken from a marketing and advertising perspective, and you will be able to sort of attract the mass markets. I think you're not going to see some fly-by-night Batman guy go out there and get soccer moms to start using Bitcoin, right? It's going to be the large established companies, right?
That's
right.
Like so, today. Do you have any concern the bit license will push innovation out of the country?
I think it will push some innovation out of the country, but I think while it does that, it will also bring a lot of very established money into the space. So right. So when you have you have institutional investors, you have banks that are just looking for clarity. So when they get clarity, you're going to get a lot of people coming in, and I think that will greatly outweigh what leaves. So
sure, that makes sense. How close to the first version of the Bitcoin license do you think the final version will be?
I hope that it's scaled back considerably, particularly from regulating developers and other people who are creating technology. That was blanketly covered in the original proposal, and I think you got a lot of pushback specifically on that area too, because I think everybody understands that developers and entrepreneurs need to be able to push forward as fast as they can. That's the only way Bitcoin's going to get where we all want it to get.
Yes. And
it's only when you stop and start applying the technology that they've built do you need to start imposing rules. But those guys should be able to they should be able to full sprint ahead.
Sounds good. So I'm going to ask you a tough question here about Ross Ulbright trial. Okay, so just give us some thoughts on that.
One of the interesting legal issues, I guess, that I find fascinating was that he is the only, part of his coins were seized and part of them were not. And the portion that weren't were because he was the only person that knew the key. And it wasn't written down anywhere. It's sort of a brain wallet, right? And I find that interesting. And one of the interesting questions to me was, can you force him to disclose that? And no. So you have the right not to incriminate yourself, and so by disclosing the fact that he knows the public key, he's sort of incriminating himself by admitting that he has control over that wallet that was associated with silver, right? So that was, to me, one of the most fascinating questions. I think, I'm sure they'll strike a sort of plea deal to some extent. I mean, you saw it with Charlie, and Ross is certainly, from a seriousness standpoint, is probably, on a different level than Charlie was. But there's a lot of smart people working on that case, and a lot of people in the Bitcoin community are behind him. So there's a lot of people advocating, especially that he just gets a fair process, right? Which I think, as an attorney, that's, I like to believe in the system and believe that it works. And I think, to the extent he gets, a fair shake, I think that's all I can hope for.
I guess if nothing else, we can certainly give him credit for innovation.
Correct. Yes. Well, to be honest, I think you can put a lot of what has happened in the last year, a lot of the growth in Bitcoin, in the Silk Road. Now, it was absolutely a controversial service, but it also got a lot of spotlight and mass media attention. So without that, we may not be where we are.
You're
today.
Right. It broke it wide open.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. What kind of investment do you think a mining contract would be considered legally?
I think it is it depends on whether or not you're selling hardware or if you're just selling revenue from the hardware.
That makes sense.
So that's sort of where whether or not it's a security, not a security question comes up. And a lot of the guys that are doing cloud mining right now are actually selling hardware. They're just not delivering it to you. They are holding it in their data center for you and running it for you, but you technically own it, even though you may not have any idea how to operate a mining rig.
So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up here, but is there anything that you want to add on? And the other thing is add a little bit of contact information if somebody wants to get a hold of you for legal advice in the Bitcoin sector.
Sure. So my name is Andrew Beal. You can reach me at andy@crowleystrategy.com. And I work with exchanges. I work with large brokers with a Coinbase type business model. I work with ATM operators. Just started working with more mining hardware, cloud mining companies, and then anybody that's developing technology too. If you're just a developer and you're building white label software for exchanges, you're building some sort of mobile application. We do a lot of that too.
Okay, great.
So
great,
yeah.
Fantastic. Here's a real tough question. We're going to ask everybody this, but what do you think the price of Bitcoin is going to be January 1st, 2015?
I may be I don't want to say the naysayer, but I may have a different opinion than others, and that's I think the price could very well be lower than it is today. So I think it could be lower than $300, and a lot of that is because of my personal belief is that I don't think it'll actually be used as a currency as much as it's just used as a back-end rail to move other things.
Payment processing type of thing.
Right. So, but I do think, and I also think that the holding of coins will become more centralized by like service providers, and they own a bunch of coins. If you own the coins, you own the rails. So, and you can charge people to use the rails.
Sure, that makes sense.
So, and they can offer value-added services on top of that too. But I also think there's room for others too. I think there's room for other coins too. So I think if you take the market cap of all cryptocurrency together, I think it will far exceed what we have today. But if you just look at Bitcoin specifically, it may not.
You're
not
right.
Be
There's
more
a lot
than
of innovation in the altcoins.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
could be smart contracts and that kind of thing, right? So
Yeah. So if you take all those market caps together,
huge.
yeah, it could be 100 billion. So
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Andy Beal.
Thank you.
This is Jay Addison from CryptoBiz Magazine, live from Meckler Media's Inside Bitcoins conference in Las Vegas. Remember to subscribe to CryptoBiz Magazine at CryptoBizMag.com. Follow us on Twitter at CryptoBizMag. Thanks for joining us and learn more at CryptoBizMagazine.com.